Hi, my name is Karen Holmes. I'm the founder and director of the World Peace Organization for the One World Government. There's been a lot of talk lately about the big lie, and people are very confused about what's happening, and people they know there's something really wrong and between, let's say, the Republicans and the Democrats, and they don't know how to solve this problem. Well, I'm going to explain to you something that is associated with our first government proposal, and that is the exit strategy for Iraq, because basically the preemptive strike was based on a lie that there were weapons of mass destruction and that Saddam Hussein had the intent to use them. When George Bush told the lie and Tony Blair from England, they told the grand lie. Basically, ripples of effects went out from that. It drew in people, the coalition countries. It drew in people, like, say, the people, the U.S. soldiers, the people who signed up to go to war, become soldiers. It drew in a lot of people. So this is not something that is something that is unusual for the United States. Our government. Our Defense Department is shaped like a pentagon because of acts of revenge. This is one of the books that I channeled. This is called the Pentacle of Power. This is the pentacle. It's a symbol of revenge, and it's a 5-pointed star. So that's why generals have stars on their shoulders. And basically, why the Pentagon is shaped the way it is because of these five power games that our government is playing. Okay, one of them leads to war. If you draw like a 5-pointed star, this one is the game of pride, the 7 deadly sins, and they're deadly because somebody always dies. Pride, the game of pride, leads to war. The game of envy leads to genocides. The game of greed leads to massacres. The game of lust leads to slavery, and the game of anger leads to terrorism, acts of terrorism. So what happens, and that justifies the person who plays the game of pride. So when George Herbert Walker Bush had for the Gulf War invaded Iraq, basically he played the game of war, and then George W. Bush played the game of genocide. He actually triggered a genocide, and that's why it was so hard to stop. He told the grand lie, and then that brought in the coalition countries that were in it for greed. They were in it for like lucrative government contracts or whatever on an individual basis, and then that brought in the people who are in it for their own interests, and that brought in the people who are slavers. And this is where ISIS came from. ISIS is not a terrorist organization. In fact, Al-Qaeda told everybody that they were not associated with that. It is a slave organization based on weaving an illusion. These two power games are based on weaving illusion. This is acts of terrorism, is denying the game of anger. It's denying people a voice. So let's say that an example of anger, denying people a voice, is voter suppression. So when you talk about voter suppression, you deny and that kind of thing, you're talking about acts of revenge, and the problem with it is these two power games. It's like 5 people will come together, 5 groups of people will come together, and they'll each play their favorite power game against Saddam Hussein. That's what happened with the Iraq War, why it was impossible to stop. In fact, it's still going on now. Our organization, our first government proposal, is working to try to stop the global genocide that's devolving as a result of the Iraq War. Okay, so what happens then is that as each of these bring in their people, then what happens is a time comes when they start to unravel it, and it backlashes on people. And as I said in a previous video, the when George Herbert Walker Bush died, he wasn't able to get his life. He wanted his son Jeb to become the next president, having two sons president, a president with two sons being president. That would be a pretty remarkable thing. He'd be the first time in history that happened. John Adams, his son John Quincy Adams, was president, but now this would have been Jeb Bush coming in, and Donald Trump beat him. So here was a Republican with the family is known all about this for a long time, but the Iraq War was one of the things that prevented Jeb from, it was like a failed foreign policy decision that caused the problem. And I don't want to go into that a great deal, because this is going to be a court case that is to end this conflict. Our exit strategy for Iraq is going to lead to a court case. But when somebody tells a grand lie, what you have is like, let's say what we have here is to look at this idea. We had ripples of effects that went out from it. So let's say that you tell a lie about somebody in town, and the people who don't know that person don't have any way to know the truth about it. And then so they believe the lie. So let's say this. Let's say if Donald Trump told a lie, the grand lie, a big lie, do the Republicans in Congress know it? Where do they fit along the line that of ripples that go out? Do they know the truth? Are they aware that he lied? Are they assuming that he's telling the truth? Even though, it's kind of hard to say that he's telling the truth when he's been fact-checked all those times. So what we have now is we have ripples of effects going out from this point, and the last two, and the light source invention, the last two power games that we have here are terrorism. When there's acts of terrorism, now this has been called the riot at the Capitol, the insurrection, has been called an act of domestic terrorism. We are one step away from becoming a failed state because of this. And if you go back and you look at all of these ideas, the Iraq War started this idea, the intolerance against the people like Al-Qaeda. And here, okay, what happens? Why is there, if you're denying people a voice with this, with acts of terrorism, and let's say targeting minorities and telling them that their votes are not going to count, they're American citizens and their votes don't count, that's not fair. So what we have is people standing up in protest and saying, what you're doing, our government is doing, is not fair. And if they don't listen, if they just close their ears to it and say, oh no, this is the way it's always been, and this is how we get our power, and all we have to do is gerrymander and everything, then basically that's how we keep in power. The only problem is, like I said, is with this game of revenge, is you're undermining the people who brought you in. Okay, so let's say that the game of pride, the person who plays the game of pride is actually undermining the people who are standing in protest. Okay, so if George Herbert Walker Bush was blaming Al-Qaeda, and Al-Qaeda said, we had nothing to do with this, with ISIS, that was not our fault. We didn't do it. They're not part of our group. They're undermining ISIS. So what is ISIS then? It was a slave organization. Okay, they didn't recognize the power game that ISIS was playing, because they were sending out, like in Yemen, they were sending out, and why there's this big war going on in Yemen is because President Saleh played the game of lust. Now, I'm going to tell you that the game of lust is, people have to understand the games, how they work, why they don't work, how revenge works, and why it doesn't work. Because when the grand lie is told, the only thing that brings a sense of balance again is, to the ripples, is universal law. So now exactly, so let's say this. So let's say that you had in Iraq, you had the grand lie being told saying President Saleh, or Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and the intent to use them. And people were going, no, he doesn't. And how would somebody like me know? And that is universal law. Because, let's say, and in the legal system, a preemptive strike goes against the idea that somebody is presumed innocent until proven guilty. You see? So if you believe in the law that someone is presumed innocent until proven guilty, now, where did that come from? Where did that come from? A long time ago, let's say when with talk about racism, like in the South, somebody could go and accuse some black man of doing something, like a woman would accuse a black man of whistling at her something, and he was going to rape her, do something terrible to her, and they would go and lynch him. But then what happened next? Did they take his home? Did they evict his family? If he had something to take, is that what they were doing? Were they playing the game of greed? They were denying him a voice. Was he gaining power? And I've talked about this in other videos. But what happens is we have to understand that the grand lie, once it's told, the truth doesn't overcome the lie. The people who stand on the principles, like the Democrats saying, this is not right, basically, it's not going to happen. They're not going to convince them, because basically, the Republicans are grabbing for power. They are using revenge against Barack Obama. Why? Now, what could be the problem? And maybe what it is that Barack Obama and the Clintons supported the plan for the international government. At that point in time, you don't know, because the Republicans might be saying, we have to defend our country against the creation. It's not in our best interest to support a plan for an international government, because we are not going to give away our power. So they fear loss of power, so they are grabbing for power, and they're using this idea of revenge. And they've collected all of these people who are all playing these power games. And you can see places there where it's been happening. The plan for world peace is the scariest thing of all. I mean, for people who rely on the existing structure, world peace is scary. People are praying, all over the world are praying for peace, and over half the population of the planet has prayed for peace. Now, and that's a message that I got from the spiritual hierarchy back in 1999. Over half the population of the planet has prayed for peace. People in 87 countries support the plan for the international government. Basically, the approval rating for this has gone through the roof, and the other people don't probably have access to computers. Okay? So what we have now is a plan that has cultural, and it solves the problems, has cultural review, has past cultural review. It solves every problems. It solves economic problems. It solves everything, because it's based on universal law. It brings back all of these power games to the midpoint, where basically everybody can move forward in our progress again. So when people start telling the grand lie, nobody knows who to trust. But basically what you do is you look at universal law. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now tell me something. Why the protesters, what are they thinking when with the preemptive strike? What were they thinking? What was their thought behind that they would get up and protest? The lie had been told, but why were they immune from the lie? And that's a really good question, and that is because do unto others as you would have them do unto you. They believed in universal law, for one possibility. They said, why would we go into Iraq and topple their government? I wouldn't want our government to be toppled. Okay? We don't do things like that. I have nothing against the Iraqi people. They have the right to choose their own government and their own leaders. If they don't like them, they can handle that themselves. We don't have to go in and do that. And the weapons of mass destruction, Congress, the Senate had already released information before that happened that said that the sanctions had been working. So the people who were aware of it were going, I don't support the war. I don't support any war. Can't diplomacy work? And if Hans Blix was going out and saying there were no weapons of mass destruction, why was it necessary to just keep pushing and pushing and pushing to make it happen? Why, when you tell the lie, people should say, if more information intelligence is coming out, then we don't do this. Why did that have to happen? Because it was a power grab. George W. Bush, he was grabbing for power. And the power game that he played was the game of envy, and that's why it devolved. He judged Saddam Hussein to be evil. He was a Christian, and he believed not Donald Trump, but Saddam Hussein was evil, axis of evil. That sense of judgment, where he put his father on a pedestal, and he compared other people to him, and the lack of loyalty, and all those ideas came together, and it created this sense of a judgment. The knee-jerk reaction that stops a war makes a genocide worse. You can't, let's say, put people down. You can't do that. It doesn't work. So basically what has to work is universal law. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I know that what you are doing, not you particularly, specifically, you can say, I know what you are doing is not based on universal law, because I know that you would not want somebody to do that to you. I know you are breaking universal law. Basically, that's where it is right now. So, I ask that you like, share, and subscribe. When people are telling the lie, basically, these books that I have are the Power Series books, and they go along with that idea. This is just the first book, the first principle of it, how revenge works and why it doesn't work. And basically, it explains a lot about what happened in Iraq, and it's not up to me to... I'm not very good at explaining. This was Lady Gaia, the female aspect of God, because vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. So she's the one who helped me channel this book. She gave me the information on it. It's not available to the general public. I have to bring in the professional publishing team first. And right now, they're all running around getting revenge. The problem with it is the people who are getting revenge they're basically in severe crisis and basically hitting their end of life crisis because they cannot get their life by getting revenge. So you got to let go of the revenge, and then stand on the principles of universal law. Like, share, and subscribe, and share this with your family and friends, and open a debate on it. This is the most important thing you can do, is understand about how universal law functions and why it helps to bring back the problems. It creates a sense of balance again. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you.